for the majority of NBA teams, they either fit into three different categories. They're either contending for a championship. These are usually the top teams in each conference with real hopes of winning a title in the near future. The second category consists of teams who are in the playoffs, but they're not exactly the cream of the crop. At most, they're a dark horse contender with a slight chance of winning it all, but for the most part, these teams are just happy to be there. The third category consists of teams that are very young and still rebuilding, and some are decent, but most of them are either very bad or they're tanking, in hopes of building a better future. So we have an idea of what these teams are trying to do, even if they're not that good right now. Those are the three main categories that most teams fall under. But regardless of what situation they're in, there's always gonna be questions. How's it going, folks? My name's Andy, and today we're gonna take a look at 6 NBA teams with a very questionable future. What is their plan moving forward? In this video, I'm gonna talk about those teams. Alright, let's get started. Number 6, the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, the Wolves could fall under the category of a young team, still rebuilding and trying to figure it out. But besides Karl Anthony Towns, who by the way, he's been balling like crazy, I feel like he's become underrated since outside of Timberwolves fans, not many people are paying attention to them after Jimmy Butler left. But Towns, he's been killing it, and it looks like he's back to being the same Karl Anthony Towns we saw before Butler got there. The issue is that, without Butler, the Wolves are also back to being their old selves. Towns is doing everything, Andrew Wiggins looks even worse than before, and Derrick Rose, despite him having a revival season and making fans happy, he's not exactly gonna carry them to the playoffs again. The team's defense is still awful, although to be honest, it was still pretty bad even with Butler on the team. That's one of the confusing things about the Wolves. Tom Thibodeau was always known to be a hard-nosed, defensive-minded coach, and yet not even him could get the team to play any defense. They've always been bottom 6 or bottom 7 in defensive rating every year he was there. Maybe that's why he got fired. With that being said, they do have a slurry of young players who may or may not develop, but that's what they need to focus on. We won't be seeing a major free agent coming to Minnesota anytime soon, and with Towns being so good, they won't have a super high lottery pick anymore. All of their improvement will have to be through internal development, like making good low-key trades for players who fit their team better. I thought that getting Robert Covington and Dario Saric was a decent trade, although it wasn't that good when it happened. It was the best that they could do, and it sucks that Covington got injured shortly after. He would have helped the team a lot, way more than what people realize. Number 5, the Charlotte Hornets. I feel like every single year in the past 5 years, the Hornets could always be on a video like this. Once again, another season is gone, once again, another year of Kemba's prime wasted, and once again, they're still stuck at the 9th or 10th seed. They've become the most predictable team in the league, and not in a good way. They always seem to be stuck in this situation. On paper, they look very average, and on the courts, they actually are very average. You got the lone star in Kemba Walker, surrounded by a bunch of decent to below average role players, and there are games when Kemba has to do everything, and when he has an off night, they typically lose. Even with a coaching change, it didn't lead to any tangible results. The problem with the Hornets is that, well, they do have Miles Bridges and Malik Monk. Every other player on their team is in their primes and most likely won't get any better. Nick Batum, Marvin Williams, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Jeremy Lamb, Bismack Biyombo, Cody Zeller, and even Kemba Walker himself. Eventually, the Hornets front office will get rid of these guys once their contracts are up, and then it's gonna be Kemba and a bunch of scrubs. Not like it's already like that anyway. Then they'll be bad enough to get a higher draft pick to hopefully build for a better future. But by that point, Kemba will be out of his prime and, well, we don't know what's gonna happen after that. Number 4, the Boston Celtics. Now, it gets interesting with the Celtics. I think in any scenario, they will be a great team moving forward. The question comes down to, what can they do to make them even better? And how will they handle all of their contract situations? As you probably know, they have a ton of great players who are going to be free agents, or they have a player option and might not return. Of these players, that includes Terry Rozier, Marcus Morris, Aaron Baines, Al Horford, and Kyrie Irving. I'm not saying any or all of them will leave, but that's a huge number of players whose futures are still up in the air. Hopefully for them, Kyrie and Horford will likely re-sign and stay, but with the Celtics having a season that's not as good as expected, something could change if they have a bad playoff run. There's been times throughout the season where they look amazing, like legit contenders, but there's a bunch of other times where they barely look like a playoff team. The inconsistency is ridiculous, and you saw so many times where the Celtics would be like down by 20 points and then make a comeback, and vice versa, where they'd be up by 20 and blow the lead. Unlike other teams on the list, the Celtics have a lot of options, some great young players with ridiculous potential, but it's how they handle these options, which will determine how successful they are in the near future. Number 3, the New Orleans Pelicans. Of course, the main question surrounding the Pelicans is Anthony Davis. For the most part, what we know is that Davis is not going to stay there. He's not going to re-sign, but his contract does not expire until 2020, so the Pelicans still have about a year to find a great trade for him. In my opinion, I thought the reported offer of Lonzo Ball, Kyle Kuzma, Rajon Rondo, Michael Beasley, and a first-round pick was, it seemed like a good deal to me, but the Pelicans rejected it. I mean, they're obviously not worth Anthony Davis, but you gotta remember that Davis is a disgruntled superstar who wants to leave and made it known that he wants to leave. Or at least that's what the reports say. Because of this, his value tanked. The truth is, nowadays, most stars don't get traded for as much as people expect. Think of DeMarcus Cousins and Jimmy Butler, and what those teams got back in return. At least for the Kings, the Cousins trade did not look that good on paper, but it turned out to be good. The Pelicans' entire future depends on who they get back for Davis. How good will this package be? I thought the Lakers' offer was decent, considering the situation that Davis was in. And also, considering that Dell Demps got fired shortly after he rejected the offer, I think everyone else in the organization wanted to do that trade, except for him. Number 2, the Los Angeles Lakers. On the other side of the whole Anthony Davis fiasco, the Lakers got the short end of the stick. This trade could have been good for both teams, and Davis would have made an immediate impact, and if it went through, maybe they'd be in the playoffs. But because it didn't go through, this makes their situation kinda awkward. I'm aware that the Lakers had some injuries throughout the season, but even when healthy, this is not a team that could contend in the West. And with LeBron getting older and older, there's no certainty if they could ever contend in the near future. It all depends on who the Lakers could get in free agency, which is what they've been trying to rely on for the past couple years. Considering that, that's the main reason why they did not keep guys like D'Angelo Russell or Julius Randle. Not because they thought they weren't worth it, but because they wanted to use that cap space to get a superstar. Of course, they were successful in doing that by getting LeBron, so you can't really blame them. But even with LeBron, it's not enough. The future of the Lakers strictly depends on who they could get in free agency, or if they could maybe rework the Anthony Davis trade and get him. But if neither of these two things happen, I can't really see the Lakers getting anywhere during LeBron's time there. And number 1, the Washington Wizards. The injury to John Wall changed the entire direction the team was going. Previously, they were still hoping to contend and build on what they already had. But because Wall tore his Achilles, everything flipped around. They used this as an opportunity to get rid of Porter's contract, and in return they got back Bobby Portis and Jabari Parker. Portis is on an expiring contract and Parker has a team option that the Wizards don't need to pick up if they don't want to, but both Portis and Parker have been pretty good. The thing is, with Beal leading the way and becoming the primary ball handler and scorer, the Wizards' offense is actually more efficient without John Wall on the floor. This season, their offensive rating with Beal on the floor is 114. In the past 3 years, with Wall and Beal on the floor together, it's 110. However, their defensive rating plummeted without Wall. Usually, the Wizards are in the middle of the pack defensively, but this season, they're 28th in the league. I also think that has something to do with getting Parker and Portis as well. The main question is, assuming that Wall does come back, will he ever be the same player again? A ruptured Achilles is no joke, especially for athletic players. In the best case scenario, assuming he does come back at 100%, the rest of the roster is still questionable. And that's all, folks. Those were 6 teams with very questionable futures. With the exception of the Celtics, the rest of these teams are not in the playoffs and still looking on ways to get back on track. Let me know your thoughts on these teams and which other teams are also on your mind. Let me know in the comments. Thank you everyone so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.